Think about these two people. Let's call them person 1 and person 2. Person 1's attributes are love, care, ordinary, take, dark. Person 2 is dark, take, ordinary, care, love. If I had asked you which of these two is a good person, I'm sure many of you would choose person 1. But hey, person 2 has the exact attributes as person 1. I will be discussing Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. This will help you understand why you can easily be manipulated and make wrong decisions. By the way, Daniel won a Nobel Prize in 2002 for his work in economics. The takes from this book can help prevent you from making bad decisions regardless of who you are in life. The author uses the concept of System 1 and System 2. Think of these systems as two personalities in your brain. System 1 acts automated, intuitively, involuntarily, effortlessly. Think of that friend or relative who is always quick to talk, never thinks before they speak, yet knows very little. System 1 dominance. System 2 is a side of your brain that responds very slowly, requires focusing, computing, analyzing, taking deliberate actions. Think of that quiet relative or friend that just sits in a corner, but is actually very smart. System 2 dominant. Every one of us have these systems and both are required for our overall survival. You will need your System 1 fully operational when you come across a wild hippo charging towards you. And you will need your System 2 to solve complex mathematical problems. The problem arises when we apply the wrong system. For example, when high energy, high speed System 2 attempts to solve a problem meant for System 1, which is known to be lazy and slow. This happens majority of the time, which of course leaves us making wrong decisions. The author explains the contradiction between these two systems as a result of some biases that exist in each and every one of us. Priming. Priming refers to the subconscious influence of a stimulus, words, images, or concepts on our subsequent thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. Remember the experiment at the beginning? Once you saw love, care, ordinary, you concluded that he was a good person, and 90% of us will not bother reading the next two words. Similarly to person 2, because of the first 3 words, you concluded he was a bad person. An experiment was carried out in a restaurant, and it was noticed that people bought German wine on the days German music was being played. More French wine on the days French music was played. A simple change of music changed the buying behavior of people. We can apply this in our daily lives. For example, if you wake up in the morning and the first things you think about are your problems, that person that made you sad the previous day, your debts, your rents, you will simply ruin your entire day, and you end up piling unnecessary frustrations onto every situation you encounter throughout that day. On the other hand, if you wake up in the morning and spend the first 2 minutes showing gratitude to life, the things you already have, like your family, your friends, etc., it will change your attitude about how you handle problems. Think about this. If you have an online store, what are the first 2 or 3 things that your customers see? How it makes them feel will determine if they make one more click. My role at work requires me to propose process changes or tweaks, and sometimes convince teams or departments to adopt certain tools. During meetings with relevant stakeholders, my first sentence will be, "Thanks a lot for your time. I hope this session will be valuable to you. If at any point you think you're in disagreement of whatever I am saying, please feel free to stop me and we can address the matter again." I simply want an agreeable conclusion at the end of the session without anyone pulling ranks on the other. This might sound simple, but I realize people get more relaxed and engaging when you give them the license to call you out. 90% of the times we end up with solutions we both can agree on. This simple sentence ends up saving lots of time and people speak their mind. I love it. Priming can also be negative. For example, you constantly tell yourself you're not good enough, you can't do this and that, it's hard. You are setting yourself for failure. I used to know someone whose default response to anything that requires even the smallest amount of effort is I can't, I don't know how to, it's hard, and you can tell from the life they live, always idle and depending on others. You don't notice it, but these words turn to behaviors quickly. This is because priming works at the subconscious level and its effects can be disastrous. Research shows that if you are constantly reading words associated with impolite behavior, you end up being rude to other people and are good at interrupting others when they speak. Just think for a second. If simply reading words associated with impolite behavior can affect you, then imagine what negative thoughts can do to you. Thoughts are much more powerful than reading words because they involve imagination and emotions. Let's play a game. It's called the coin tossing game. I toss the coin. If it's a head, you get £10,000. If it's a tail, you give me £10,000. Straight away, many of us will not want to play that game, even though it's a 50-50 chance. The only reason you might agree to play such a game is if I decide to offer a higher reward. The space for negative emotions in our brains are 3 times larger than the space for positive emotions. So the real reason you didn't want to play this game is because the negative emotions coming from a loss are stronger than the positive emotions coming from a win. In short, we simply hate losing. This creates what we call the loss aversion bias. We can actually spin this to our favor when convincing someone to do something. We don't only tell them the gains they will get, we also tell them the loss they will get for not doing it. You just might convince them. Loss aversion can limit us from acting, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. When we think of the risk, the journey, the work involved, we get paralyzed and give up the ambitions quite quickly. One way to reduce the risk of loss aversion is to always look at the long-term benefits than the short-term pain. Sunk costs. Imagine you buy a £75 ticket for a music festival. On the day of the event, it rained heavily. Plus you have cold. The thought of attending feels miserable. However, you think you have spent £75, so you might as well go. The better rationale would be to sit at home and relax, but you rather go under the rain even though you know you are going to feel worse. You are influenced by a sunk cost. Sunk cost is an expense that has already been paid and cannot be recovered. The same logic applies to a business going nowhere. You leave it running just because you have spent money in the past and end up incurring huge annual costs. A relationship that isn't working, you're there just because you think you've invested lots of time and emotions already. You are operating under the sunk cost principle. Think about those expensive clothes you have. You don't wear them anymore, but you don't want to give them away because you paid good money for them. Sunk cost. Think about that massive table or cabinet occupying space in your house. You don't really need it. You keep it anyway because you think it was pricey. Sunk cost. We need our system too to make these decisions. But guess what? It is lazy and requires conscious effort. Framing bias. You pay a visit to a doctor and he tells you you have a 10% chance of dying. You go see another doctor and he tells you have a 90% chance of living. You will feel much better after seeing the second doctor. But actually, both doctors said the same thing, just framed differently. The choices we make are heavily influenced by the way they are introduced to us and will have a powerful effect of how we make decisions. The halo effect. Attractive people can get away with stuff. For example, they are statistically seen as smarter, funnier, and more likable. If 2 women commit an offense, the attractive one is more likely to have a lesser punishment. It makes no sense, but hey, our system one tends to be influenced by physical appearances and other irrelevant characteristics that have nothing to do with the matter at hand. This happens in the workplace too. If the employer sees the candidate as attractive, they are more likely to rate them as intelligent, competent, and qualified. So next time when you're looking for a business partner, make sure to ask yourself if they have the relevant knowledge and expertise you require, or you are just being influenced by their physical appearance. Anchoring. Imagine you see £100 on the label of a dress. You bypass it and think it's too expensive. You go to the next aisle and see the same dress, but this time the price tag is £50. You quickly grab it and think you're buying it cheaper. Meanwhile, the label in the previous dress was just an error from the sales assistant. Car dealership use this principle. They keep their most expensive cars outside, and once you get past them, you see cheaper cars and quickly think they're cheap. This is called anchoring. We need to protect ourselves from it. One way is to set a mental amount of how much you are willing to spend before leaving your house for shopping. That way, if you see an overpriced item, you pass. The endowment effect. Once we own or think we own something, we tend to overvalue it regardless of its objective value. This is known as the endowment effect. Software vendors use this principle to give us free trials. Dealership let us do test drives. Even fashion stores let us wear their stuff on trials these days. The longer people spend interacting with the product, the greater the sense of ownership. As you spend time on this product, the harder it will be to give it up. This is why we love IKEA products. We spend time putting it together, and eventually it seems like we built these products ourselves, thereby attaching more value to it. If we decide to sell this furniture, we tend to sell higher just because of the value we are associating to it. Remember to always ask yourself if the price you've put on that product is fair. At work, sometimes we stand behind certain ideas just because they came from us. We need to pause and think of the real reason behind our actions. Confirmation bias. I once wanted to buy a particular car but heard rumors that the security system of that car is very bad. When I googled the validity of that claim, I saw numerous confirmations and ended up deciding not to buy the car. It was only later that I found out that it wasn't really true. Every car has their flaws, and this was no different. The issue is I had googled using the keyword security issues, and the search engine gave me just that. Confirmation bias is a tendency to search for and find evidence that supports your opinions and beliefs and disregard the rest. We humans process information in a way that our previous beliefs still remains intact. If you want to believe in something, you will find evidence to support it. You're going to find videos that the earth is flat if you believe in the flat earth theory, or a bunch of black kids robbing a store if you're looking to confirm that this race is violent. I tell you what, doctors will highlight researches that confirm their diagnosis than to admit their initial diagnosis was wrong. Come to think of it, this is a little scary. This is also quite common politically. People will rather spend time looking for information to confirm their political point of view than understand the other's point of view. It is difficult to combat confirmation bias. However, we can start by following these 3 steps. 1. Accept that it exists. To solve a problem, you first need to accept that you have a problem. 2. Always seek contrary advice. This is painful, but having a contrary advice might help you see any red flags in that idea or decision you're about to make. Before point 3, I have a question. Do you find it difficult to stay motivated to complete your task? 3. Don't ask confirmation questions. As I just did above, instead, try asking open-ended questions. We can rephrase the above question as, Can you tell me about how you approach your task and manage your workload? Thank you for watching, and see you on the next video. For more content like this, hit the like and subscribe button. Let's make this epic journey together as we read and discuss books after books.